When you first kind of launched into your own business and putting yourself out there, what was maybe the most nerve-wracking part of it for you, and kind of putting your reputation out there in that way?
I think for most people at the time, Curated Compass, it's been through a few evolutions. And the very first time was when I was leaving my 9 to 5 corporate gig in San Francisco. And up until this point, I was 26, and my career at this point, looking back, was just starting, right? But everything within me felt like this is who I am. My identity is baked into this agency that I was working at. I was doing tech and food PR. And I just moved from Chicago to San Francisco and put in a few years there. And I mean, I just had a pit in the bottom of my stomach when I was going to announce to my colleagues and my clients and my network that I was going off to do my own thing. I totally feared the judgment, and I'm from the Midwest, so I'm already a very like self-critical person. And the internal narrative is people please, and measure yourself by where your peers are at and where they're headed. And I will say in the marketing realm, it is so much about branding yourself and networking and talking with other people. So you can't help but feel, well, their story really inspired me, but I'm not there. So what does that mean about me? So going off to do my own thing, to launch this new business, and I distinctly remember the exit email that my manager sent at the time, like, Mads is now leaving us. She's pursuing her own career or her own business, and is going to start traveling, and let's wish her luck. And I'm like, wow, it is in an email. It is forever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and then
it's on paper now.
With my desk. Yeah. And we're like, tell us about it. And I was like, I don't even know what it's about quite myself. And I think that's the journey of entrepreneurship. It's belly flopping into this bottomless abyss. You just don't know what's going to be on the other side.
I love how you put that, because when I left my first job, I actually didn't even know I was going to be an entrepreneur at some point. I just needed an excuse to get out of there. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to start my own consulting thing for a while. And they were like, oh my God, Martin, like, don't forget us when you're famous. And I'm like, oh God, no, don't say that. Like, just, it's like too much pressure, right? And so I think that's so interesting, that imagery of like belly flopping into the abyss. Like, when you first, took that plunge, where did your brain go to first? I mean, obviously we all look up to people. We all see what people put out there. So there's a lot of like the external facing parts of building your own business, and then there's a lot of internal like silent stuff. But what was maybe like the first thing you did to go out and like stand on your own 2 feet? What did that look like when you started building it?
I think having a logo and a website check marked a box of validity. And in return, it inspired me, look, you're legit. Like, other brands have websites. You are established. This is the first step. So as you belly flop into that world of the unknown, it's all of these small steps that lead you to the next thing. And I think so many people who are considering going off and doing their own thing, whether it's to freelance, be a contractor, consult, or to launch a brand and eventually build a team, so often people get overwhelmed that they don't even take the first 10 steps that are right before them. And I do equate this to my move to San Francisco. When I left Chicago, I didn't know a soul there. I didn't know anyone who had left to the West Coast in their mid-20s. And I got a job offer on vacation when I was there the week before, just exploring. I've got an itch to try somewhere new. It was New York or San Francisco. I wanted to coast. And I got a job offer, and they said, can you be here in 3 weeks? And I about broke down, because I was like, this is too big of a change. I'm mentally not prepared. I had imagined doing a 3-month roadmap toward a move. But you know what? It was just, okay, I gotta, let my apartment know that I'm breaking my lease early. Then I need to figure out how to get my things to San Francisco. So I need to research, how I can do that and what pod, company I'm going to work with. And then all of a sudden it was just like the tiniest little steps toward actually making it happen. And I didn't realize that that was my strategy at the time, but it totally worked. And so now that's how I approach most things with Curated Compass, and professionally, how I kind of lay out my roadmap.
That's awesome. And so when you were putting those steps together and you ended up in this, new space, new town, new job and everything, were there any big surprises that happened? Like were there any parts that kind of caught you off guard that you really weren't expecting?
Yes, I thought I was going to be able to find an easy housing solution because I had great credit. I'd never missed a rental payment. I was like, I'm from the Midwest, I'm really friendly. And what it led to was a 3-month housing search and having to find temporary housing and applying. It was harder to get a roommate in a housing situation than it was getting the job. I was applying to different apartments, like up to 6 a day. And eventually I learned the perfect template of including photos of me, and to show that I had friends, to show that I was real. Yeah, to show that I was actually active and didn't just say it, because it's a pretty outdoorsy city. And it totally worked out because I ended up falling into a rent-controlled house with all East Bay local women around my age, which absolutely paved the road for who I am today. That housing situation. So I'm so glad I waited it out, and ended up officiating one of the roommates' weddings last year, which is pretty cool.
That's amazing. I've never heard of a home hunt being so much like a job search. That's really fascinating.
I had to brand myself as the ideal roommate. There were some people that said, you seem really nice, but we're in our mid-30s, and you're in your late 20s, and we feel like that could be like a culture clash. And I was like, what?
Oh, it's so many years apart.
I know, right? It was crazy, but they could be that picky. And so it was like pitching new business or pitching yourself for a new job. That market was so saturated with housing challenges that, yeah, it turned into that. So
and it's cool that you're able to pull on the actual skill set that you're using in other areas of life too, right? Like that's one of the things that I think people don't always consider when they're going through the job search or trying to build a business. We get really myopic in thinking about skills. We're like, oh, I need to write a resume. It's like, no, you need to learn how to write convincingly. It's like, oh, I need to write a cover letter. No, you need to tell a story. Oh, I need to practice for an interview. No, you need to learn how to verbalize your thoughts. Like there's all these deeper skills that apply in multiple areas of our life as we're kind of reaching towards these goals, that if we would actually just focus on the core skill and the practice, a lot of the other stuff would become so much easier, right? Like filling out an application for an apartment, not the most fun. Learning a skill of writing and persuasion, pretty fun. So like, how have like other skills that you've seen that have been really helpful in building your business also applied in other areas of your life?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think that's really important, identifying the how you get there, not the what I have to do. Like I have to get a home, but how I get the home is where I can get really creative. And my background is in pitching media. So all of a sudden, I took the client aspect out of it and I became the thing I was pitching. I think once you're able to look at it from that angle, the how you get there, I think it's really important to identify what makes you uncomfortable, and when your internal gut is like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm not great at this. I have anxiety. So one thing that most people don't know about me is that I'm a counterphobic. And what that means is that the things that I'm scared of, I run toward. So there's something about that emotion of fear and can you actually do this that I can't help but pursue. So I love people, and I know I always have a really good time after I go to a networking event or a business function of sorts, but I get so nervous, but I know that the payoff is worth it. So what I've learned in my business is that, those things that scare you, I acknowledge that for what it is. But then I also know that those are the things that really fulfill me, those pathways that I take. So when I did end up traveling, and bought a one-way ticket to Bali, not knowing what was going to happen, I was at the airport in near tears saying, "What did you do? Why did you do this? Why did you continue to go against what your gut was telling you?" And this might sound counterintuitive of trust your gut. I can trust my gut that those are the things that fulfill me. So, yeah, that was a really roundabout way, I think, of answering your question.
No, I
But
like it.
yeah, that's something that's been very true for me in my life and my business.